hi everybody. I'm Matt Prindiville and I'm the CEO of Upstream. We work to spark innovative solutions to plastic pollution, but for us the problem's not just plastic, it's really the throwaway culture that's driving plastic pollution and a whole host of other problems. So we work to make throwaway go away, and we have a number of projects that we do and work in partnership with the Conservation Law Foundation on several of them. And so it's great to be here with you guys today. Had a pretty typical idyllic childhood for growing up in coastal Massachusetts, spent a lot of time outdoors and on the beaches. But I can remember when the cod fishery collapsed. This was the 80s. Many of my friends' dads were fishermen, and virtually overnight, we had a situation where they went from doing very well to losing their livelihoods, to losing their homes. And I remember for me, it was the first time that I really encountered the experience of what happens when we don't take care of the natural world. And that experience stayed with me. I ended up going to college out in the Northwest. I did a freshman year seminar class, and we read a book called The Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawken. And it was the first time that I was introduced to this concept of a circular economy and of things like zero waste and extended producer responsibility as tools to help create that circular economy. And I didn't know it at the time, but it ended up becoming my life's work. I've spent now 20 years really working on a variety of initiatives to help grow a circular economy here in the United States. I think many people, when we think about reuse, we think about bringing your own bag or your own coffee cup or your own water bottle. And that's all great. But we also know that there's only going to be a percentage of the population that's going to be willing to do that. And what we think is actually what's going to create systems change is when the businesses start developing reuse services, so that you don't have to remember your cup or your bottle or your bag. It's just part of how you get your meals to go, how you get your groceries, how you get products delivered to your home. And so most of us experience, the most common way that we experience businesses providing us with a reuse service is when we go out to eat at a restaurant. Most restaurants serve you on real plates with real cups and real cutlery, and all of that is washed and sanitized in a commercial dishwasher and then put back out for the next person, right? So we experience this all the time when we go out. For the next level up is really around takeout and to-go food and beverages. So for example, let's say that I want to get a cup of coffee, but I forgot my reusable mug, which happens to me sometimes. And I have a lot of consternation around that when it happens. And so, but let's say I walked into a coffee shop anyway. I'm like, I need my coffee fix. I got a meeting this afternoon. I'm just going to have the throwaway cup. And the person behind the counter says, "Oh, no problem, sir. We actually have reusable cups that you can borrow. You just need to, sign up for this app. There's a company that provides us with reusable cups every morning, and you can drop it off at any other cafe in the city because every single coffee shop is using the same reusable cup service." And so we're also seeing businesses come up to do the same thing for takeout and meal delivery. So, if you're getting Indian food delivered to your office or your home on Wednesday, and you're getting Chinese food delivered to your home or your office on Friday, you can hand the delivery driver the dirty to-go container from Wednesday because all the restaurants in the area are using the same kind of reusable takeout and to-go service. And so, the next level up from that is really around how do we get our groceries, and also how do we get products. When Amazon starts to deliver us all the things that we order in reusable totes and containers, then I will know that I can retire. So that's really the next level up from there. But the really exciting thing about these services, reuse can save businesses money. And it also helps put people to work in local supply chains. These local reusable to-go and takeout and delivery services, you're employing people locally in the collection, in the dishwashing, in the logistics, in all of that's serving your local community. And you're building up local supply chains that are going to be much more resilient than these global supply chains. I think one of the things that coronavirus and COVID has taught us is that if we're reliant on global supply chains for necessities, that's a problem. And so, that's one of the other things that's really exciting about these services is that not only can they, not only are they good for the environment, they're also good for businesses' bottom line, and they can help create jobs and create local economic resilience and economic supply chains. I think that there's really three core trends that we're seeing out there in the marketplace. One is that China's policies to no longer accept our low value recyclables has really put the nail in the coffin for recycling. Recycling was broken before China did this. And if you want to add COVID into that, it's really put the nail in the coffin for recycling. And recycling is important. We want people to recycle. But right now, the systems that we have for developing products and developing packaging, the companies that make these products and packaging, they're not thinking about the next use, right? These products and packaging, for the most part, are designed for the dump. And so there are some systems change tools that Upstream and Conservation Law Foundation are working on, like extended producer responsibility, for example, which would make the companies that sell the products and the packaging that you buy responsible for collecting those products and packaging and doing something useful with it when we're done with it. And so that's kind of a foundational policy that we need here in the United States. Europe has it, Canada has it, China has it, developing countries are implementing EPR. We need that here in the United States. But the fact that recycling is not working right now is a major reason why we need to be thinking also about source reduction and reuse. And I think for the first 40 years of this mantra of reduce, reuse, recycle, most governments, most people, most businesses have only really paid attention to the last R because it's the easiest one. And I also think we've been lulled into a little bit of a sleep by industry, by government saying, just put this in the blue cart or the blue bin and you've done your job. So recycling is good. It's better than throwing something in a landfill or incinerator, but there also are environmental impacts to collecting all of the unwanted packaging, getting it somewhere, processing it, sorting it, grinding it down, remanufacturing it into something else. Whereas if we can figure out ways to get people what they want and need without generating any waste in the first place, through things like source reduction and reuse, it's a net win for the environment, and also it's a net win for businesses because they can actually save money by doing that. And so it comes down to rethinking how we get people what they want and need, and looking for ways that we can eliminate the unnecessary throwaway disposable stuff. I wrote a report with my friend and colleague Marcus Erickson from the Five Gyres Institute several years ago called the Better Alternatives Now report, the ban list report. And we looked at all of the top high pollution products in the environment, everything from things like plastic bags to styrofoam containers to cups and lids and straws and you name it. And as we started to look at this list and really think about where are the intervention points, what are the strategies and solutions that we can do to solve this problem, I noticed that this list kind of neatly organized itself into three different core types of intervention strategies. Now, on the one side of this list are products that have little to no value. These are products that if they're gone from your life, or even if they're gone from the businesses that use them, it wouldn't have that big of an impact because there's readily available substitutes that are cost comparable and can do the job just as well as the plastic product. On the other end of the spectrum are products where plastic has clear utility and value. And I think about this every time that I'm at an airport or I'm at a convenience store, I need some snack food because I'm about to get on a plane. The vendors require that the food is protected for 12 to 18 months. And plastic does a good job doing that. And so for these types of applications, we need design change. And I think when most people think about design change, they think, well, it's just, we're going to design a better package. But sometimes it's about designing a better system. And so we're really focused on that because we see this as an area that's ripe for disruption. So we're already starting to see this, right? Because COVID and coronavirus have made it so that a lot of us are getting food delivered. We're doing curbside pickup for groceries. It's really changing the landscape. I've been listening to podcasts and doing some reading and seeing how business people are reacting, and that e-commerce and online ordering for food, for products, for your sundry items, a lot of this stuff is moving to online. And one of the other trends that's happening is that when people make that decision, like I'm going to order all my groceries online now, they rarely go back. So this is something else that we're seeing and it's changing. And so while we absolutely think people need to be doing anything that they need to be doing to protect themselves from coronavirus, we also know that if you're ordering a lot of stuff online and everything is built around a disposable paradigm, that we're going to be generating a lot more waste. So I think what we're excited about is what are the opportunities here, right? And how can businesses get people what they want without generating waste in the first place? So thinking about how services are coming online to respond to consumer demand, we work with a company out in the Bay Area called Dispatch Goods that was, their business model formerly was delivering stainless steel reusable to-go containers to restaurants in downtown San Francisco to use as part of their delivery and takeout options. And so they were seeing themselves as a container company, right? What COVID did is it said, oh, we need to rethink our business model, because a lot of these restaurants are shuttering, or if they or temporarily shuttering, or if they can't, come up and do the delivery themselves, it's not going to work. So they said, oh, we could actually compete with Uber Eats and Grubhub and Seamless and be if you want to get your food delivered sustainably, order through us. And so they rethought their business model because of COVID. We had Tom Zaki, who's the CEO of TerraCycle and Loop, on our podcast a couple months ago. And he was saying that as COVID hit, their subscribership jumped up. And they actually went out of pilot phase. So during coronavirus, they actually moved out of pilot phase and they've opened up the Loop store to much of the country right now. You can order personal care products, you can order laundry detergent and even certain kinds of snack foods and non-perishable groceries through the Loop store, and it's delivered to your house in a reusable box tote, and then all of the containers. So if you get a reusable aluminum jar of pretzels, for example, or a reusable aluminum jar of laundry detergent or things like that. And so what they're doing is they're disrupting these old models that are based on disposability, and they're attracting a customer base of people that want to bring in the reuse revolution. One of the things that we find to be really helpful in creating the conditions for reuse systems to thrive is actually public policy. And this is a great way that citizens can get involved. They can partner with groups like Conservation Law Foundation and Upstream to advocate for reusable foodware ordinances. So we've worked with our partners to develop a reusable foodware ordinance that makes it so that when you sit down to eat at a restaurant, they're going to serve you on real cups with real plates and real cutlery. Doesn't matter if it's a fine dining restaurant or if it's McDonald's. Everybody is held to that same standard. And then it also helps to pave the way for these reuse services to come online by putting fees on disposable takeout cups and disposable takeout containers. And what that does is it provides an incentive for a reuse service to come in and provide that same service for free to the consumer. So it's not free, period, because it's a business selling a product to a business. But the best systems, the ones that we want to see happening as much as we can, are the ones that are free to the consumer. So that so that when you are going about your daily life, and now all of a sudden, instead of getting all of your stuff in disposable containers and cups, you're getting your stuff in reusable containers and cups. And now you're participating in a system that's getting those cups and containers back, washing them and putting them back into service. And that's really when we've completely changed the system. Because the economics are there and the people are excited about it. They're having a better experience. And it's also a great opportunity for that business to market itself as, we're a green company, like we do this reuse service now. Like it's another way of, having a reason for somebody to order from your restaurant or your cafe, or to come into it, because now you're doing it in such a way that's different from your competitors and better. Anything that you can do in your own life to reduce waste, whether that's when you're out and about or getting take out food and coffee and things like that, or when you're shopping, or the way that you think about, using up everything in your house before you buy something new. All of those things have cumulative effects on the environment. And any time that we're creating less demand for disposability, and also creating different kind of cultural signals around what's acceptable, like, hey, I'm going to use this thing up, I'm going to reuse this, I'm not going to just waste this. It really starts to change the cultural landscape as well. The second thing beyond what you can do as a consumer is what you can do as a citizen. And I think that's really getting involved with groups like the Conservation Law Foundation, with groups like Upstream, that are working on the policy conditions to really change the way that business operates, and that these systems operate in our communities. And so thinking about your communities, that can mean talking to the politicians that you vote for. It can mean talking to the businesses that you frequent. If you notice that the favorite coffee shop that you love to go into hasn't started setting up their own reuse service or working with a reuse service, you could bring that up to them. If you notice that there's something that could be changed, like, I have this experience all the time where I go into a cafe, and even though they have real mugs behind the counter, everybody is being served, even though they're sitting down, on the throwaway cups and the throwaway lids and the straws and all that nonsense, right? So sometimes it's also just about changing norms, saying, hey, can I talk to the manager and have a conversation? So I want to give just a personal example of my own life. I used to live down the street here in the next town over, and I was close to town, so I'd walk into town to get lunch a lot. And this one cafe had the best soup in the world. This guy was like a soup savant. He was so good at like making these beautiful soups. But even though I was sitting down, the only options they had were like, you serve yourself in a throwaway cup with a throwaway plastic spoon. So I brought it up to the manager, and she said, yeah, we'll look at it. So day after day, I would walk with my bowl and my spoon, and I would sit there, and then people would start asking me like, oh, I didn't see the bowl and the spoon. Where was that over there? And I would say, oh, I just bring my own. And over time, like I had another conversation with the manager, and then another one. And then finally, like one day I just showed up, and there were the reusable bowls and the reusable spoons. And so, I'm not saying this to toot my own horn. It's just, it is a value that I have, and was something that I was going to do anyway. But because I was showing that value publicly, and acting on that value, it had an impact in my community. And so I think, we forget sometimes just how much the power of conversation has to shape beliefs and attitudes and change things. And I think if we continue to have conversations with, our loved ones, with the businesses we frequent, with the politicians we vote for, that over time, that's going to change what's culturally acceptable, and that's going to start changing the norms. And when we change the norms, we don't even need the laws, right? Because once the norm has changed, then everybody has to respond to the new normal. And so the law can help spur a new normal, but sometimes it's not even needed. Like, for example, we saw the straws thing blow up so quickly, right? There's a policy in place that requires, straws only on request, and we've passed that in a number of places. But what we saw by making straws uncool, and I say we being the royal we, the plastic pollution movement, making straws uncool, is that we saw businesses start to respond voluntarily, and people starting to say, I don't want that straw, or like, hey, yeah, I want my drink, but please don't put a straw in it. And how that really, once that norm changed, that changed the culture around it. And some of those things, like cultural norms, once they're changed, they often have significant staying power, right? So once that norm is changed, you don't have to go back and defend the law from the industry interests that are trying to roll back the progress that you made. It's just the new norm. They can try to fight it, but if the norm is, they can try to roll it back, but if the norm has changed, people are like, no, we're not voting for that, right? And so I think that's very powerful. And I think groups like, Conservation Law Foundation and Upstream that are really focused on how do we change those cultural conditions, there's a tremendous amount of power there. And a lot of that power is with our constituents. It's with our supporters that are the ones that are out there making the change out there in the real world.